So Crystal, tell me about yourself.
Hi, Lenny. So my name is Crystal Cook, and I'm a mental health therapist. Been in this field for over 20 years, and really, my whole vision is to raise the vibration of the planet. And what I mean by that is just helping people live happier, healthier lives. And so, I'm a mental health therapist. I'm a speaker, and I'm an author. I've written a series of children's book series. The first one has been released, and it's all about just helping people be happier.
Be happier. And I love that you said
Mhm.
raise the vibration
Uh-huh.
one person at a time. I'm curious to know more about your therapy and how your work differs from other therapists.
Probably because of my history. I have a history in law enforcement. I am not touchy-feely. And that's nothing against therapists who are touchy-feely. And if you need that, that's fantastic. I am, and we've talked about this for Lenny, very similar to how you approach your coaching. I will push you and then let off a little bit, push you and let off. And my therapy is really divided, I would say, into two parts. It's a very, very thorough front end psychosocial assessment. And what that means is just really learning about you, your history, and all of us have wounding. I don't think anyone can be born into this world and not have pain. That's just part of life. And that can be from wounding all the way to full blown PTSD. And when we have these experiences in our lives that are painful, we often develop coping mechanisms that aren't always helpful later on. That maybe that results in self-limiting beliefs because as a kid you were told you weren't smart enough or you didn't feel like you were smart enough, all the way to being abused. And that affects how we show up in the world now. So, what I do is really find that presenting core problem. It's kind of like if you go to the doctor and you have an infection, we've got to dig in there and get out the infection. We've got to find the infection rather than just kind of put a band-aid and dress the wound. I want to get in there, focus, laser focus on that. And then what I do is a psychosocial, not a psychosocial, a psychological personality test. And with that, we are really able to quickly find out all of your strengths because I want to take advantage of your strengths. That's called strength based therapy. Take advantage of all of your strengths, laser focus on the issue, come to your goals, and let's be very specific about your goals and not get sidetracked. What do you want? What will that look like? What will that feel like? And be very specific and focused. And my style is isn't necessarily soft and gentle, and I'm very caring, but let's get it done and let's get to work. But I will meet you where you're at and push you, but come back a little bit so that I don't push you too far, so that I don't push you beyond what you're ready for.
I really appreciate that let's get to business approach. And I think that there is a way, and I've seen you certainly express this and do this. There is a way to get to business and be compassionate, which I really appreciate. I also it struck me when you say that you start off with a really thorough assessment and psychological test and really getting to know your people before you get into the work. In my life, I have seen two therapists. After my sister got sick, that was really hard, and I saw a therapist for a little while. So in specific moments in my life, I have seen two therapists, and both times there wasn't a very thorough, let's get to know each other, psychological or personality assessment. And so it's interesting that that's where you start. Why do you feel that that is such an important approach? And I'm curious, why don't more therapists do that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, as a supervisor, I think with the team that I supervise, part of it was clients come in and they want to talk. Let's just talk. And it can be really difficult to say, okay, I don't really know you yet, but let's get down and really go into your soul. That
Mm.
can be uncomfortable. And I think it's easier to just fall into this rhythm of talking and talking about everyday problems. And there is a dance to it, right? Because if I don't know you from Adam, you come in and I'm like asking you all these personal questions. You're like, whoa. So there's a finesse. There's a rapport, but also an explanation. I just tell my clients at the very front, like these first couple of sessions, are going to be a lot of questions, a lot of nosy, snoopy questions, but that will help me. And once we get past that, then we can really, it'll be more of a conversational flow.
Mhm.
And I think it's easy because we're humans. We like to converse, right? We like to talk, we like to chit chat. And it's hard to just like dig in there and get to the core. And that's just really how I work, because if I don't really know what's going on for you, I can't help you. And I think another reason that people can fall into that therapist is that people's lives are complex. We have issues that happen to us every week. So oftentimes a client comes in, and that may be the first time that that client has ever had someone for an hour focused only on them. Right? Like we have friends where we chit chat with them. We want to really tell us our problems to them. And they, oh, well, let me tell you about mine. So we don't have that undivided attention for an hour. So our clients can come in and I call it verbal vomit. They just,
Mhm.
and so the therapist will kind of go with that. And it's really redirecting the client to say, I know you have a lot to say, let's really focus on this, or what you want your goal to really be. And I will say, if you want someone that you can verbal vomit with and just talk to, that's great. And if that may be healing for people, that's not my style. To me, it's like, find a friend, because
Mm,
if you're paying me, I want to give you something. I want that your end
mm,
of your time with me, you have something. You don't just have that time to talk. And I think that's why it's difficult to do that, I would say.
mhm. I love that. Well, what I'm understanding is that there's a certain level of guidance and leadership that you bring to the table that really helps the client navigate and redirect the conversation in a way that's maybe more productive than the typical venting that's available to you with a friend or with a therapist that maybe is not as structured in their approach.
Right. And in therapy I am very structured. Certain things in life I'm not structured, but in therapy I am. And just really wanting to keep you on that trajectory. I talk to my teams, like when you develop a goal with a client, be specific about what they want. It can be very vague, right? Oh, I just want to be happy. Okay, what does that look like for you? What does happiness mean for you? What will be different? Because that's such a vague goal, right? Or I want more confidence. What will that look like? What does that mean? Because if you are that vague in your goal, how will you know if you ever get there?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember we've talked about this before, and I remember you talking to me about the importance of addressing your trauma, your pain before you even look at your goals. Why do you
Right.
think that's so important? Because I've noticed that most people tend to go right into the goals. I'm that person.
Right. To do it for sure. And there's certain times that maybe you would want to, like I may have a client that says, hey, I want to, which may be kind of a more of a coaching type of thing. I'm in a career that I hate and I want to become an entrepreneur. Can you help me with that? Okay.
Mm,
With that, that's very goal driven. It's
mm,
very solution focused, right? But if it's something like, I have a job and I keep getting fired, I keep blowing up at my boss, I can't make friends, I have relationships that I continue to, they end. Well, there's a pattern, right?
mm,
There's a pattern in these behaviors. So let's go, what's causing these behaviors or maladaptive coping mechanisms that maybe they developed from somewhere, maybe as a child or whatever. So let's get to the core of that. Why are you doing this?
mm.
Let's address the why, the core issue, heal that, because there's a lot of ways to heal that, have insight into it. And oftentimes when we have insights, oh my gosh, it's me. I'm getting fired. I'm losing these relationships because of what I do. And this is what I'm doing to cause it to happen. Why am I doing that? Oh, I get it. So having that light bulb go off is healing, but then going back to heal the wounding from that is helpful, because when that's healed, then you can change your behavior
Mm.
and then we can have those goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I want to say, who else is so tempted to just go after the next thing, go after the next job, or start the new relationship without looking at the underlying cause
Mhm.
underneath.
Now, and two, now, if that's something that you enjoy, then there's not a problem with it, right? Like if I like to have different jobs, if I like to have different relationships and it's giving me joy, there's not a problem. But if
Right,
it's
but
causing me distress,
hmm,
that's the problem.
right. No, and the pattern that you identified in this scenario, that
Right.
certainly doesn't feel like the most, like the healthiest.
Right. And that's what a thorough psychosocial assessment will do. That's what I call it. That's therapy language. At the beginning, it's the nosy, snoopy questions because I see patterns.
Hmm.
Oh, I see patterns in other people's lives that they don't see in themselves because we can't see them in ourselves. Take a bird's eye view. And of course, I had that training like, oh, okay. And oftentimes, just even after the second assessment session with clients, like, and I repeat back to them what I am observing as the patterns, like, oh, I do that, don't I? Oh my gosh. And even that after two sessions can be really helpful.
I have to say, because I've gotten to know you for a while now, yes, you have all of this extensive training and experience that certainly informs that ability, but I would argue that it's also your magic, your intuition on top of your
Right.
training that allows you with such skill to recognize these patterns in a way that is very special to you.
Maybe so. I live inside of me, so I don't know, but I do know, especially working with teenagers, I see patterns, and I may not have a good memory about certain things, but when it comes to people's lives and their stories, I remember. I'll even have friends say, "Oh my God, I told you that 20 years ago. How do you remember that?" It's like, because I remember your
Mm,
life and your stories. And so I will have, when I was working in the school system, not working, I was working for the military, placed in the school. I had all these teens. I had like 30 teens I was working with. And I would hear their stories and I would observe in the hallway. And they would come into my office and I would say, I noticed blah, 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 blah. It's like, are you psychic? Maybe it's intuition, but it's also I recognize patterns.
mm,
So
yeah,
yeah, maybe that is a magic that I have is just really I can tell body language, I can see the patterns in the history. And so it's almost like I can see a movie that's visible to me and maybe not completely visible yet to the client.
gotcha. You mentioned working with teens. Do you only work with teens or who do you typically work with?
Great question. I work with any age. I've worked with children. I've done play therapy for a long time. The past 9 years has been primarily sixth grade through 12th grade and the families.
Okay.
But I also work with adults. I do a lot of trauma work, PTSD work, which is I utilize a modality called EMDR, which is evidence based. So any age I can work with. When it's teens and children, I like to have the family unit involved.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Are there any modalities that you use that you want to talk about?
I am really a fan of evidence based type of modalities. And what that means is that there's research that shows that it's effective. You
Gotcha.
know, I'm not very much into come into my office and let's have a conversation, let's drink tea. And I'm not that my voice may sound condescending and I don't mean it that way, but I feel like if I'm getting paid to do a job, I want to make sure that I'm delivering you a package that I know is effective.
Hmm.
Um,
And there's
and
that no nonsense, let's get to business approach that I was saying earlier, I really appreciate.
Right. Yeah, like if hire me to build a house, you want a house built. You don't want like a little board here and there and a pretty painting on it, but like let's get your house built. And so, but then I customize it to each person because not one size fits all, right? So some of the modalities I use that I've talked about is EMDR, which is for trauma. Also, I do cognitive behavioral therapy, which really helps you change your thoughts about things because when you can change your thoughts, you can change your feelings and you can change your behavior.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's really helping you to take control of your emotions
Hmm.
and your behavior. DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, it's a lot of skills based stuff. It was developed by someone to help more like clients who have borderline personality disorders. That's another topic. But a lot of times for adolescents who self harm types of things. But dialectical behavior therapy are skills that are useful for anybody. Interpersonal relationship skills, emotional regulation skills, mindfulness, that's what that is. A lot of strengths-based type of strengths-based, what I talked about before, is finding your strengths, and let's really capitalize on those strengths to help you with your issues. And then the personality test that I do is all evidence-based.
Okay, so then what I'm hearing you say is that you've got all of these tools in your toolbox and you have a structure, a way that you like to work with your clients to ensure that they get the healing and the results that they're looking for. And depending on their specific needs, you'll go to your toolbox and pull out the appropriate tools.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
I've never thought of therapy as like so buttoned up and structured. I've always thought of it the way that you were saying, very loosey goosey. Let's sit on the couch and talk about my mom, or vent about what happened this past week. And so you're really opening my eyes about how different therapists can have such vastly
Mhm.
different approaches, and how important it is to find the one that's the right fit for you. Do you need somebody who's more, let's get it done, or do you need somebody who's just gonna, pet you while you vent on the couch? Because
Exactly, exactly, for sure. The more of that supportive type thing, and more the loosey goosey, kind of like, we're let the client guide the therapy. And then there's also different modalities. I have a colleague that does psychodrama. She loves it. It's not my cup of tea, just because I don't really know it that well, and it doesn't just resonate with me. But I think it's very effective, and I think it's a great modality. Some people use art. I'm not really an artist, so I can't really use art therapy. I can do play therapy, great, but art therapy. So, and find like the different types of things, because there's so many types of therapy modalities out there that I think are fantastic, that it just is not something that I am skilled at as
mm,
well. So I think one of the things that I tell people is, one thing I think is very, very important, and this is research that they have shown that and this, we're talking about my toolbox and all my evidence-based stuff, but it's not necessarily the modality that the therapy uses. What research has shown, it is the alliance between the client and the therapist that shows a lot of success. And what that means is that you and I have a rapport, and that you trust me.
mm,
And then that will, when you trust your therapist, then you can develop skills and get towards your destination. And what I always want to tell people is, if that relationship with me isn't working, that is fine. Find someone that you feel connected to, and don't be afraid to fire your therapist,
yeah.
even if it's me. Like, you need to have that level of comfort with your therapist to get better, and to ask questions, because a lot of people don't, like, I will have kids like, I don't even know what to do in here. I don't know what therapy is about, and so find out what kind of modalities they do. Find out if they're licensed. What type of license do they have? What kind of training do they have? And see if that resonates.
Yeah, I love that advice. Fire your therapist if you have to, and at the same time, I can't picture anyone not immediately loving working with you.
Well,
Um, so on your website, on your blog, I know you have a blog post about when you should seek therapy. If anybody wants to read that and learn more about that, they can certainly do that. But in a tiny little nugget, do you have any advice about when someone should seek a therapist?
I think everybody could use a therapist, but really, if things aren't going your way and you're suffering and it's been a month
Yeah.
and you're just feeling overwhelmed and distressed, find help.
Okay.
And it may just be, talking to your chaplain or talking to someone, but find someone. But yeah, a month, if you're distressed, like really distressed, I think that you should seek out help somehow.
Yeah, that's a very like measurable way to see if you
Hmm.
need that kind of support. Um, well, I want to talk a little bit about goal getting, goal setting. I know that that's part of your jam, and something that you're really passionate about. Um, Before we get into that, why do you think so many people struggle to accomplish their goals? Before we get into how do you accomplish them, why do you think so many people just flat out struggle?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Because I think we're not clear in what we want. If
Mm,
we don't really know what we want and know what that's going to look like and what that's going to feel like, and be very specific, we're not, how do we know where they're going to get to? How do we even know where to go? If I said to you, Jaslenny, I want to go somewhere nice and warm and sunny, like, okay.
Yeah, there's a
Where's it
million
gonna
places that
be?
fall under
Right.
that category.
Yeah. And so it's like, is that, right, nice and warm and sunny? Does that mean 100 degrees? Does that mean 60 degrees? Does that mean where you can get in the water? And what are you going to do when you get there? You know what I mean? So it's like to be very specific. Or even to say, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's like, I want to be successful. Okay, I want to be successful in my career. Okay, well, what does that really look like? Because success is subjective and it means different things for different people. Um, Even like if we take something like I want to lose weight. That seems like a pretty specific goal, right? But why and what does that look like for you? Is it health reasons? Is it because you have early onset diabetes? Is it because you want to fit into that cute little black dress to look good for a Christmas party? Or is it because of how you feel when you can fit into those cute pair of jeans? Like, what does that really mean for you to
Mhm.
get really specific?
Okay, so you're saying the reason why most people struggle achieving their goals is because they're not clear about what they really want.
They're not clear about what they really want and they get distracted along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And for people listening or watching this, if this resonates with you, because it's certainly resonating with me, what advice would you give around, or how do you help your clients set
Yeah.
their
And so,
goals and achieve their goals?
yeah, it's tricky. It's so, for instance, if someone says to me, um, I want to be more confident. Great. That's a great goal. What does that look like for you? Well, I don't know. I'll be more confident. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to walk with your back straight and yours back and you're going to look people in the eye and make eye contact? Does that mean that you're going to be able to stand up in front of a crowd and be a speaker? Does that mean you're going to ask that person of interest out on a date? Does that mean you're going to start a conversation with someone you don't know? Like, what does that mean? And then what is blocking you from getting there? That's the other piece. We have blocks, right? So, what are you benefiting from not having confidence? Oh, well, if I have confidence, I have to be seen. If I ask that person of interest on a date, I may be rejected. If I have to get up in front of a group of people and give a speech, I'm really putting myself out there. So then we've got to talk about that, right? Like, what are you
Mhm.
benefiting from not reaching your goals? And then what are those self limiting beliefs that's keeping you from doing it?
Mm,
I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not witty enough. So it's kind of those things. So there's the goal. There's our shining star. And what are the barriers that are keeping us from getting there?
yeah.
And really being clear with what those are, because a lot of times we're not clear, right? So for me, it's like, really, let's just shine the light on everything. Let's go into a dark room, turn on the bright lights, and shine the light so we can see better and find all those hidden pieces that are, the self-limiting beliefs can be very hidden.
Mhm. And as you say that, sort of my ability to see patterns is kicking in and thinking about how not putting yourself out there, not asking that person on a date, not getting on that stage and speaking, um, gives us a false sense of safety in that, oh, well, if I don't try, then I don't risk
Right.
what might happen, the rejection, or what if I fall on stage? You're safe from any potential embarrassment or otherwise, right?
Right, exactly. Right.
Um, Crystal, I have so enjoyed chatting with you today. Before we part, any advice of what we can do right here, right now to raise our vibration or raise the vibration of the world?
Gosh, there's so many things. And I would just say keep it simple. What you can do to raise the vibration of the world is do something kind for yourself, right? When we're busy and we're stressed out, we think about what can we do for other people. But you know what? When you're happier and you're more at peace, you instantly exude a higher vibration. So do something that pleases you. Maybe take a hot bath. Maybe read that book that you've been wanting to read that poetry. Do something that feels good to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for anybody who wants to work with Crystal, learn more about her therapy, her children's books, or her other services, you can go to operationtransformationbooks.com.
Right.
Crystal.
Thank you.